Cause nobody owe me nothing, no. So every time that you see me, know that I'm grinding hard for me.
As we step into the new year, many of us aim for personal growth and improvement. Today on Spotlight, we delve into an essential aspect of this journey, your finances.
New year, new you. How can you set those financial goals and get them achieved? This morning I have financial coach Renee Ottley with me. Good morning to you, Renee.
Hi, good morning.
Let's go through some of how we can make this thing make sense, because last week we started talking about getting yourself mentally prepared, and it's great to start that journey from a mental perspective, but then it has to trickle down. So how are we going to make these achievable goals financially? Where do we begin?
So I would say the first thing that anybody has to do is create a financial plan.
Right.
So the financial plan is really just creating budgets, setting priorities, figuring out what your goals are, and sort of getting everything aligned so that you can achieve whatever savings or investment goals you have. And it's a great idea when doing that to get financial help. So
Right.
An advisor who is an expert in the area who can really help you get to those goals.
All right, so work with me here, right? Let's say at this point in time you can't afford an advisor, whatever that may be, or you don't have a friend who's really good with finances or anything like that, right? But you can say to yourself, all right, I have this goal I want to achieve, so I can make my own budget, I can make my own plan.
Yes.
How do I stick to that? Because every year people start off the year going, I have a budget, I have a plan, I'm going forward, making it make sense. And life always just come and look a bill here, look at extra costs that you didn't expect to happen here. How do you prepare for some of those unforeseen circumstances?
So firstly, I think everybody can afford an advisor. Advisors are often free for us in most of our banks. There's someone that you can chat with who understands what's happening in the market, who keeps track of, what the trends are, and who can give you some advice.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be wealth management advisor, but it can be even a banking professional who has a good idea of what's happening in the market and can help you.
Okay.
But sticking to it, yes. So I think that's the biggest challenge we all have when we develop this financial plan. It sounds nice, looks nice. We have a great spreadsheet, there are colors on it. And then how do we keep doing it for the next 12 months? So I think it's important that we set realistic targets and that you create a savings account that you cannot touch. Something where you don't have a debit card that you're constantly going to the bank and using it. You put it in a place where maybe it might be inconvenient to go. So it's a bank that might be a little bit out of the way,
Right.
or it might be a type of fund that's harder for you to access. So for example, mutual funds, where it's a little bit harder to withdraw funds, fixed deposits, also a little bit harder to take funds out of because there are penalties. So something that would discourage you from constantly touching it. I think those are some of the best ways, even personally for me, has helped me to grow my savings by not touching it when those unexpected expenses come up. But I think it's also important that we create a savings account that's specifically for that.
Right.
So build a savings account that, if something goes wrong with the car, you have to call in a plumber,
Right.
that you have that money that you can go to.
Now, one of the things I personally seeked out financial advice previously, right, a couple of years ago. And one of the things that they told me, aside from having that account for incidentals, is to really sit down with your bills for a month and assess what you spend money on. And I mean every single thing that you spend money on, including your vices. How important is that in the process of making the budget?
I think it's critical to track all of your income and track all of your expenses, especially if you want to stay on target.
Right.
If you categorize your expenses, so that helps you. So you have a category for rent, you have a category for groceries, incidentals. My incidentals are shoes.
No judgment. I include one as well. It's fine. No judgment.
So, whatever it is. And then allocate what is the max that you're willing to spend in those categories.
Okay.
So that also keeps you on track. When you see every month, am I going over in this category? How can I reduce expenses in this category? Is there something I can do to help me reduce where I'm spending? So I think that's great. That's a great way to do it, is definitely track everything and then set and allocate budgets for each item that you are spending.
Now, one of the challenges that I found in doing that for myself is that prices change. So I might set a budget and I might set it down to the cent, and I would say, all right, good, I have it all worked out.
Yeah.
And then the next month I go and I but wait, I had this worked out last month and it's not working out the same way because prices of things in the grocery might have changed, or prices of some of the devices that you might see a shoe for an extra piece of money that you didn't plan for, situations like that. So are there things that you should put in place that is in case things raise?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think one of the ways is to set a maximum in each category.
Okay.
So if you know you're spending $2,000, you say, okay, I'm comfortable at $2,500 in the grocery. So you know that you're not going to go over that. But if prices change, if anything's changed, you have that sort of cushion to spend a little bit extra in some areas. And then it also is, is there something that you can cut back on as prices go up in the essentials?
Right.
So when you take a look at your non-essential areas, do you really need that shoe? Or maybe you can put that extra money into a savings account.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really taking a look at what the non-essentials are and making decisions there. Is there an opportunity? And sometimes it's not an extended period. It's just right now I have a goal, and so I'm going to cut back a little bit, and I can always go back to buying shoes next year.
Now, one of the things I always see quoted online, and people always have these amazing quotes when it comes to money, right? And one of the things I saw is that nobody's ever saved themselves into wealth. So we're talking about saving, we're talking about putting aside money, we're talking about all that stuff.
Yeah.
But in a realistic and practical way, how long does it take for that to be able to manifest itself into you saying, all right, I'm comfortable with the amount of savings I have? Or is there another way that we should be approaching it?
So typically we say 3 to 6 months of what your expenses are is enough of an emergency fund.
Okay.
I think coming out of COVID, you see a lot of people saying maybe go to 9 months because we saw people staying unemployed for a longer time. And that's the place I think most people should get comfortable, anywhere between 6 to 9 months. Once you've hit that target, I think it's a great idea to start looking at investments, because you're correct, no one has saved their way into wealth. Typically, what we earn on savings account doesn't outpace inflation.
Right.
So we put it in a savings account, and it's worth less today than it did
when you put it in.
When you put it in, right? So everybody should be invested. Everybody should find what their risk tolerance is, and that's why it's great. It's a great idea to sit down with an advisor. Figure out what is your risk tolerance, and then what are the things that you can invest in. I've had clients say to me, I don't like any risk. Well, all you've done is move that risk from one bucket to the next, because we are all taking risks no matter what we're doing, right? So it's we are all taking risks no matter what we're doing. So
here's my challenge, right? And I've had people from the stock exchange here, and we've had conversations about it, right? Because to me, it feels like just elite gambling. like corporate gambling is what it feels like, because you're talking about risk, right? And you're talking about investing your money into something that has a chance of making you more money, but has a chance of just taking your money and going with it as well.
Right.
So is that not gambling?
It's not gambling. You have to make an educated decision. And that's why it's important to sit with someone who really understands the market before you do these things. So of course, it's a financial advisor you trust. It should not be your plumber. It should be somebody who understands the market and can really help you make those decisions. It's critical for everybody to do a risk tolerance.
Okay.
Look at where you are comfortable and what you're uncomfortable with, right? So there are some excellent stocks, excellent bonds, excellent real estate, where there's an opportunity for growth, but less risk. While there are those that will give you significant opportunity for growth, but you have to be comfortable that you could get up in the morning and everything's zero, right? Yeah. So that is not for the timid investor or the new investor.
Okay. You wouldn't recommend it for the new investor?
I wouldn't recommend somebody who's never done any investing to say, I'm going into Bitcoin.
Fair.
Right. So it is, because the goal is to build up to that place where you have funds that if you lost it, it's not going to create another dire situation for you in your financial plan.
So essentially, that savings account that we spoke about earlier, we leave in that after getting in 9 months of being able to feed you all your expenses
Yes.
for 9 months, you have that account, you
Yes.
set that aside.
Yes.
And then you start saving for your investments.
Right, yes.
What's the minimum you think we should have to start investing?
So it depends on what type of investment you're looking for. Some of the investments right now in our market have very low entry points. They start you at $1,000 at the initial, and you have low minimum entry points at $100. So every month you can just keep building it, just like you would any other type of savings account. And then, of course, once you start those types of savings, which are typically which are typically like mutual funds, you can start building up now that you have a certain cushion there and some experience investing, looking at other types, so bonds, looking at stocks, and again, always within your risk tolerance and always keeping an idea of what your portfolio should look like.
Right.
And that really, again, comes from spending some time with an advisor who can say, this is what your portfolio should look like for someone your age, with your goals, and with your risk tolerance.
Very, very interesting. For people who've never done it before, and they're like, all right, so if I invest in this, how often do stocks and bonds and things like that, mutual funds, how often do they pay you the profits? Or if you are to make money from it, how often does that money come in? Is it a monthly thing, just like you would invest monthly, you get back money monthly, you get it quarterly, yearly?
It's typically quarterly on investments like mutual funds. They typically do a quarterly reinvestment. It depends for stocks, what stock you're holding and how often they would like to pay dividends.
Okay.
Some of them pay quarterly, some it's biannually, some it's once a year. It really depends on the type of stock, and that's a good conversation to have with whoever you're investing with, because you want to understand how you're going to get income flows, because the income flows can either be used for expenses or you can use it to reinvest and really help to build your portfolio. So it's a good idea to understand how those income flows will happen and then make some decisions based on that as well.
All right, so we know we're starting off with a budget. We need a budget, we need a plan, we need to assess what you've been spending money on, what you should not be spending money on, or what you should take back a little bit from, and what you should make sure and invest in.
Yes.
So those seem like the important aspects to be able to hone in, to be able to say, all right, we're going to go forward and have a good financial year for 2024.
Yes.
All right. Taking it. I mean, any other advice you want to give before we wrap up to anybody who's looking on and still have questions about the approach to the financial year?
Sure. I think it's also important for us to look at debt management.
Ooh.
So where are your debts? Are they credit cards, loans? What are those? Is there an opportunity to pay them off faster? Especially when you look at some of your high interest debts, there's a great opportunity there to pay those down faster. Sometimes if you've gone into a sort of black hole on the debt side, especially using credit cards, it's a great idea sometimes to consolidate that into one loan and you just pay off that one loan. You know, you have a consistent payment every month.
Right.
There's no month it's going to spike and then drop. And that gives you some way to manage money and manage expenses as well.
Do you recommend credit cards to people who aren't, let's say they're now starting this journey that we just discussed, right? They're now starting to say, all right, let me get a budget, let me get a financial plan, let me assess what's going on. Do you recommend somebody like that getting a credit card, or should you be already well on your way to understanding how your finances work before you get a credit card?
So I think it's a good place to start with understanding where your finances are, how much you can legitimately spend. The good thing with credit cards, of course, is that they do help build credit. And all of us are someday looking to make those major purchases of a car or home. And it's a good idea to have something that on your credit report that shows that you are a consistent payer.
So even if you were to end up in a black hole and you pay off your debt, you can rebuild it by simply using a credit card.
You can rebuild the credit, and that's important. And also, even with a consolidated loan, that helps rebuild as well, because that shows consistent payment every month towards that loan.
Nice. Well, Renee, let me thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing a little bit of your knowledge. And please feel free to come back anytime you want to give us some more financial advice. We're taking it.
Thank you for having me. It was
Not
a pleasure.
problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a quick break and we come back with more on the Now Morning Show. Stick around and get your finances in a gear.
Cause nobody owe me nothing, no. So every time that you see me, know that I'm grinding hard for my family, for more. Cause that's all we deserve.